So hi, I'm Alex Manley and have Oliver Ferrigni here. We're going to talk to you today about building, testing and deploying your code directly to your customers. Barry mentioned earlier delivering new product. We've worked with many customers within the big enterprise. We've worked with people like Facebook, companies like Facebook and Yahoo. We've understood how they're producing software and getting software out to their customers fast. We've worked with our own internal customers. We've worked with Disneys and Uyalas of the world to see really the best approach to define your workflow for getting changes out. And I'm not talking about infrastructure changes. I'm talking about both infrastructure and application changes together, because there is often an inherent dependency between your applications on top of your infrastructure. So we have this proven workflow, and it really does allow you to deliver those changes with safety at high velocity. It's a reliable, repeatable workflow. It's a workflow that everyone understands what the different stages are. It's a pipeline, which is really a set of quality gates, of checks, of getting your changes safely through the system out to production. It also gives you visibility of who did what, where and when. And you have a view of all of your changes for all of your projects, where they are in that life cycle of that flow of getting changes out into production. So we have this prescriptive shared workflow. And we have different stages, as I mentioned before. We've got a verify stage, approve, build, acceptance, and then when you deliver, you're going to deliver to union, rehearsal, and delivered environments. So typically, when you make a change, you would get some requirements. You'd make the change locally. You test the change locally. Once you're happy with that, you might submit your change into your source control, which would then trigger off a build job, which would then do some testing in another independent environment. You would get a co-worker to do the four-eye check of the code, go and make sure you haven't put anything stupid in and it's all looking correct. You then build the artifact. So if you're a Java application developer, you would use Maven. You'd build your artifact. You'd have a WAR file or an EAR file. You then want to deploy that somewhat. You test it and you deploy it. You maybe deploy it into an artifact repository. Maybe you're using an S3 bucket. Somewhere it's stored that when you want to then go and deploy it in the rest of your test environments, you can then pull it down and deploy it. Now, you can see we have these different environment names. We've got union, rehearsal, and delivered. Now, it's very important that we have this language which is consistent for all of the team members who are pushing infrastructure and application changes through. Because you may have worked on projects, I certainly did. When I was at Lloyds Bank, we used to have a process where we would deploy to an int test environment, then it was a sys-test 1, and then sys-test 2, UAT, and then after UAT we went to a performance test, and then pre-prod, and then production. And then I went to another project within the same company, and we had a different set of environments and a different set of names. It's confusing. You just don't know where you are. You go from different project to project, and you need to rework or re-identify where you are in the workflow. So this is prescriptive, and it's really helpful as you have different teams using the same environments. I know where you are when you're in the union environment. I know where I am when my code is being built. So changes can get pushed through, and we have kind of an acceptance part of the workflow, and then we have a delivered part of the workflow. The acceptance part of the workflow is when you can have lots of teams working concurrently. You may have application developers pushing .NET changes or Java changes. You may have infrastructure changes going through using Chef cookbooks. And maybe there's dependencies between these. Maybe you have a cookbook that depends on another cookbook. But you test them independently, and then once you deliver and you get to union, this is where the dependencies get managed, and you pull in a dependency that you maybe dependent on, and you can then test the full changes, your changes, and the dependencies together. If it breaks in union, the pipeline stops. And this is a scary thing for a lot of people. They're like, oh my God, you can't stop my pipeline. I've got to get my changes out. I don't care if that project over there is broken. I've got to get my change out. Now, what we do here is, if you think about, has anyone heard of the and-on chord? Right? Okay, so for those of you that have not heard it, there's manufacturing processes. I think it's for building cars, where you'd have a manufacturing pipeline and people would put wheels on the car and put the steering wheel, and if they had a problem, they'd pull the cord, and that would stop the pipeline. And then everyone would go and have a look. And what it is really, it's about stopping the pipeline and starting a conversation. Okay, so you're starting a conversation, getting people to identify what happened, what went wrong, let's see how we make it better. And studies have shown with things like the and-on chord, actually production and the rate of production increases by having this process in place. So we've got a union environment where your dependencies can get tested together, but if they break in union, then you're going to push another change through. You'll push another change through, and then the point of rehearsal is that if the change is fixed in your union environment, then you want to test it in a clean environment, because you want to test the change wasn't because you had a broken state in a union environment. So you have a rehearsal and then delivered. And again, delivered, we don't use production. And it's interesting, the kind of world we're living in is changing. The way we're deploying things is changing. We're no longer deploying straight to production. We're using things like blue-green deployments, canary deployments. You're standing up infrastructure in parallel to your production environment. And so we now call it delivered. And then at a later date, you can switch the traffic over, and that can then become your production environment. So we don't call it, so just in case people were wondering. So we have this unified pipeline shape, and within each of these different stages, we have different phases. So in the verify phase, now we're talking here about application code, and we're talking about infrastructure as code. So with chef recipes, you still need to have good hygiene, good coding practices. You still want to lint test it, syntax test it, and unit test it. And then if that's successful, then it needs to be approved. Now we have this verify stage because you want to catch all of the issues early. You don't want to use up human time unnecessarily. So we do this automation before we get it in front of another user, where we then do the 4-eye check of the code. Does it look good? They can then approve it. So we have a kind of audit trail of people knowing who's submitted it, who's approving it, and then again, who delivers it. And then in the build stage, again, we do the same, good hygiene. We want to test. Actually, what happens here is the code will automatically get merged, and then we're going to test the code again. And then you want to do some security tests, maybe some quality tests. If you're using chef cookbooks, maybe you're going to use Test Kitchen in this phase. And then we're going to publish our artifact. So if we're talking about cookbook workflow, we're going to publish our artifact to a chef server, ready to be consumed by our test and production infrastructure, or delivered infrastructure, I should say. If you're talking about applications, maybe you're going to deploy to an artifact repository. And then if this is all successful, it will automatically go on to the next stage, which is acceptance. And you can see acceptance, union, and rehearsal and delivered all have the same 4 phases, which is provision, deploy, smoke, and functional. So provision is there because we're now also in a new world with cloud computing that we can now spin up our infrastructure on demand. So maybe at this phase, we want to spin up our test infrastructure. We no longer want to have our pre-provisioned infrastructure. We're moving from a capital expenditure model to an operational expenditure model. You don't need to spin up your environment. You could have pre-provisioned environment. It works both ways, but that's the whole point of the provision. Deploy, this is where you may want to actually run your cookbook on your infrastructure to converge that infrastructure to bring it to its desired state. Maybe you're deploying an application. You're deploying your WAR file into your application container or your I don't know, Tomcat server, whatever you're using. You can tell I'm a Java developer, so I reference Java quite a lot. And then smoke test is generally where you're going to just ping the service. Make sure that it's all up and running, okay? You want to just get that testing out of the way before you then do your functional testing. If you've got an interactive website, maybe in functional, you're going to have a set of Selenium tests to automate going through that website to make sure it's all happy. Then there's a pause point where we can now stop, the process stops, and this is where someone can go in and just look around, have a tinker about. Maybe you do want someone to go and check the environment. Do another set of manual tests if you wish. And then you can then get someone, maybe a product owner, to then decide at a convenient time to deliver the changes. And then that will deliver the change, that will push that change into Union, if that's successful, rehearsal, and then on to delivered. Okay. So we think about these phases. We've got a kind of pre-artifact phase and a post-artifact phase. And if we talk about a Java application flow, this is the type of thing that would happen in these different phases. So even though we've got a fixed set of stages and phases, what happens within each phase is totally configurable by yourselves. So if you're using Java, you may use JUnit in the JUnit. You may do lint for J. Quality, you're going to use find bugs for your quality checking. And then when you publish it, you're going to use Maven to build your artifact. And then I'm going to deploy my artifact to Artifactory or Nexus or X3 bucket. So now we have our artifact. If this was a cookbook workflow, it would be a cookbook that's uploaded to the Chef server, ready to be consumed by the rest of the infrastructure. And then post-artifact, we may use EC2 to provision. And then we'd use Chef provisioning to provision that infrastructure. Deploy, smoke tests, we're just checking that we can ping somewhere. And then we'll do some functional tests. So you can see what type of things you could do in these different phases and stages. Okay, so yeah, there's a dashboard. You can see all the different patch sets. You can go in, you can navigate into all of the different phases. You can see the log history. You can see who's approved, who's delivered a change. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a live demo. Whee! What could go wrong with a live demo? Okay. Okay. Yeah, we've had the fire alarm. So Oliver is going to take us through a typical workflow.
Can you all hear me? Is this working?
Yep.
All right. Let's do that. Cool. All right. So we're going to do a live demo of the workflow that Alex just talked about. And just to make it even more interesting, I got disconnected by another user. We're going to do that in Windows. So most of the time when Chef does demos, we do them on a Mac, we do them somewhere else, Linux, Ubuntu. We're going to do this on a Windows workstation using the Chef DK. So not only are we doing a live demo, we're doing it on Windows, and we're RDPing into a machine on the other side of the planet. It's going to be great. For this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to take a really simple cookbook that just hosts some static data on an Apache 2 instance, Apache 2 server, web service, and we're going to update it and ship some changes. Wait, what change are you doing? So if we look here, we will see that this is the current version, and it says, hello, London Summit. So we shipped a change prior to this to test it, and it worked. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the code real quick so you all can see what we're talking about. This is a pretty simple recipe. Literally just grabs some code, lays it on the server, starts HTTP2, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at delivery itself, which is over here. So this is the dashboard that he was talking about, and we will go take a look and see what the lay of the land is here. So delivery supports multi-tenancy environments. You can have multiple enterprises. Those enterprises are then broken up into organizations, which reflect more of a team structure. And inside those organizations are some projects that actually have like code and stuff in them, right? So this is the project that we're going to submit a change to. And if we click on that, we will see kind of all the changes that are open on it, all the changes, period. And they all have kind of short names. So sorry, they're all on the left. Should have been more verbose names. So for our first change, what we're going to look at here is in Microsoft Code. The index HTML is templated, and it's driven off of an attribute. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and submit a change that changes this from chef not a demo to hi there. Something nice and easy, right? And then, like most code you're going to work with, you're going to go ahead and create a feature branch. So let's get checkout -b of hi there. Okay, off of delivery master. Aliases. I always want my aliases. Let's do that again. Sorry. All right, so now we're on the fresh branch where we can actually do some work. Let's go ahead and bring that change back. So this says chef demo, and we're going to say hi there. Okay. So what we would do now, this is all normal Git. We're going to go ahead and add the file. We're going to commit -m hi.
Bump the version.
Oh, that's right. I forgot to bump the version, so this would have failed miserably. Because the versions are all frozen, and so if you attempt to re-update a cookbook to a frozen version, it blows up on you. So okay, commit. All right, so up to this point, it's all pretty normal workflow, right? It's Git, it's changes, it's easy. Normally this is where you would push or run kitchen or whatever. Don't have time for kitchen, so we're just going to go ahead and do this the way delivery does it. Delivery has a command line tool, what we call delivery. It's the delivery CLI. And what you're going to do is you're going to type delivery review. What this will do is this will actually interact with the delivery server to create a change for you. And we will see that change then pop up in Chrome. Right now, that change has been created, and we've used some job orchestration to kick off that build, lint, and unit, or excuse me, unit, lint, and syntax phases. And you can kind of see what it's doing right now. So it's running RSpec against this cookbook. So the nice part about this is delivery CLI will actually create for you a build cookbook to ship cookbooks that has built into it RSpec, Food Critic, kind of all the tools you would normally like. So out of the box, it'll do cookbook shipping for you without any real work. I'll show that at the end if I have time. Unit passed, you can see syntax is running. And once this is ready, we can go ahead and look at review. And we can see our changes, where we change that from chef demo to hi there. It's a pretty standard diff. So normally this is where I would ask a more senior engineer to come in and approve or at least review this change. So Carolyn, do you want to come up and put some comments on this?
I can be a senior engineer for a day.
Okay.
Yay! Carolyn has said ship
I
it.
think that the code looks amazing, so I'm just going to go ahead and approve it.
So you'll notice that she cannot approve it yet. And the reason that she cannot approve it yet is because the status checks aren't finished. So these run in parallel. We only have one builder running right now, but if you had 3 builders running, it would run all of them at the same time. So once lint finishes, which it just did, she can now approve. So there's a gate there, right? You have to pass those phases before you're allowed to merge code. All right?
Okay,
So
I'm going to approve it. I'm going to confirm it.
So the code is now merged to master. So this is a CI system. So it will, if we go back over here and we get checkout master and we get pull, get pull delivery would be better, I bet. Delivery/master. I never use get pull. I always use get fetch and rebase. And now they're like, use get pull. Like, what? You know what? I'm not worried about it. Get rebase delivery master because I'm old. And so if we get log, we can see that our change was merged. You'll see who reviewed it. You'll see who submitted it. All of that is built into the Git log as an artifact for you, and then you can actually see the commit that was actually merged. So you get a lot of traceability in that for free. Additionally, so you see all that data while this is running in build. So this, just so we're clear, the reason that we do all the tests again in build is it's possible master could have merged out from underneath you while you were doing other work, while you were pending. So we have to verify that both your merge is clean and that whatever the result of your merge is still makes sense. So we won't publish unless that passes. So if we go over here, so we have quality and syntax skipped, and we're actually going to publish the artifact now. I was going to take advantage of this to show you another feature, which was the audit log. So the audit log here, you can actually see every stage and phase as it's getting started and completed. And this data is returned as JSON, so if you want to compute your own notifications as an example, you can interact with the API for that. It's really kind of easy. You can compute timings, on-the-fly velocity, all sorts of nice stuff just from this data. It's available to you. And so you can actually see kind of all the things that have gone through this instance, which we started this morning. So delivery actually does a fair bit of work when it's doing stuff. So let's go back to our change. Let's go to the dashboard actually and see where it is. So our change has passed build, and it's currently running in acceptance right now. So if we click on this, we can see that it's there. There's another change called correct name that we're going to ignore because it's not in acceptance. And we'll see that we're deploying. So provision would have brought up the infrastructure necessary to run this. And then deploy is actually gonna bring up, gonna converge the node for us. And if we look, we will see that we have an acceptance node here. And this acceptance node is actually running our code for us right now, irrespective of anything that's in Union Rehearsal delivered. So if we refresh, we should see Chef Demo went to hi there. So this is where we would normally bring in a product owner, and we'd say, hey, product owner, is that the right name? Alex?
I'd come along and I'd have a look around and I'd say, I don't think that looks quite right. I'd change the London Summit.
What would you change it to?
I don't know. Hello, my London friends.
My London, all right. So the product owner has come in and said, hey, you're wrong, so what do? We follow the same process again. Git checkout, -b, OF, fix bugs, and then delivery master. So when we do that, we'll go ahead and change that to, you said London friends?
Yeah.
London friends. So.
And the version number.
And the metadata again. It's like paying your taxes. Got to bump the version. Boy, that's a feature of delivery, isn't it? Shouldn't it auto bump that for you or make some good attempt? Fix bugs. Gosh darn it. -M is what I wanted there. And then delivery review again. So this will create a new change, right? So acceptance before only had one change in it, and now we'll be able to have two changes in it, and we'll be able to ship them as one full kind of delivery of stuff. So if we go back to the dashboard and we pop over to here, we could also ask our product owner, is hi there good enough to ship today? Knowing that we've got another change in the pipeline that we could deliver at will.
I'd say go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so we can deliver that change out. And we will now see that that actually starts in Union. And if this doesn't fail, it goes all the way out. So when you're thinking about your workflow, from product approval to customer is fully automated. That gives you a nice set of safety and incredibly high velocity when you want to actually really ship a ton of stuff. I don't think I'm going to have enough minutes left to get from Union to delivered because I think I've only got a couple minutes left. So let's just take a quick look at the dashboard again. The dashboard will show all shipments, including all the changes that were in acceptance when it shipped. So you always have one spot to look to see the status of your projects and pipelines as they're shipping value out to customers. We're going to let that roll out, but I think we can go ahead and start Q&A if anybody has any questions.
Hello. Can you go into more detail on the provisioning process, please?
Sure. So in delivery, in any given pipeline, you have to have a build cookbook. And the build cookbook contains all of the recipes that reflect all of the phases that your product will go through. So you actually have complete control over what happens in provision. So right now, what we have is we're having Delivery Truck, which is our open source tool for shipping cookbooks, run its provisioning task, which just converges on whatever node exists that's tagged with your pipeline name. It'll go grab that for the environment, so it's like acceptance, site dbas, and we'll find that node, and it will converge that node with the version that is specified in acceptance. That's all done for free behind the covers. If you had an application as an example, and that application needed to find new infrastructure to deploy to, you could do a knife search, or excuse me, you could do a search, find no instances, and then start spinning them up using any tool you would like in Chef.
But the idea is you could use Chef provisioning, or you could use Terraform or other tools, right, to spin up your infrastructure in AWS or Azure or wherever you like, right? The whole point is to be able to spin up your infrastructure on demand and then go to the next phase, which is to deploy to that infrastructure. But as Oliver's shown you here, you're codifying what's happening in each of the phases. And this is now codifying the workflow. So we're not just codifying our applications and codifying the infrastructure, we're codifying the workflow that we're pushing everything through. And this would go through the same lifecycle and workflow to get these changes out as well. So you can really control what's happening.
Does that answer your question?
I think I need to try it, but yes, I think overall at a high level, yes.
Okay, great. Next we have a question over here. If you could just stand up before you ask the question, that would be great.
Your demo shows about publishing a cookbook and pushing that through. Your earlier slides showed that other applications be put through there. What would be, obviously, deliver, review, understands a cookbook structure. How about if you were trying to deploy your own source code and wanted that to go up through? Is that what you mean by application, or is it only a cookbook?
So at the moment we have, we've open sourced this Delivery Truck build cookbook, right? And that's the workflow of pushing Chef cookbooks through the workflow. But we could have, in the same way as a Delivery Truck cookbook, we could create another cookbook, which was my Java app cookbook. And in there, in the different phases, like we've, I don't know if you're showing the, where we showed you the phases earlier, in JUnit, we could actually, I mean, actually, if we just bring up the slide deck again,
Just so we're clear, is your question about artifact management explicitly, or?
No, it's more about being able to put your own software through this. So you've got your own source code and you want to use Chef Delivery to go through your workflow.
Can I take a swing at this?
Yeah, but I was just quickly. So in the different phase execution, if you're taking your Java application, you'd write your cookbook and put what you want to happen in the Java phase.
So we use delivery to ship delivery, right? And so delivery is a big old repo with Erlang in it and a bunch of other stuff. And so our cookbooks will, the Git repository that backs that actually lives in delivery. So when you run a publish job, the first thing the delivery client does on a worker is clone the repository and actually execute whatever your build cookbook is. So for us, it's reasonably complex. It's go grab Erlang at the right version, make sure that it's right, go run whatever our actual automation is, which is usually make, and then build a release and then package the release into an omnibus package, and then go ahead and upload that into Artifactory. So, and all that's in one recipe. That actually isn't super long. I think it's like 130 lines. Also, all the stuff that we're doing there, like grabbing Erlang, we're open sourcing all of that kind of stuff to a languages recipe.
Hey, so the stages that you've got defined, I saw the skip stages. Is there a reason that you don't do the additional stuff like security and quality before you ask a human to review? Because the humans are usually the expensive part of the equation. So is there a reason the stages aren't effectively configurable? I get what you said about master moving under your feet as a reason to do something twice, but is there a reason you're not moving more things to the left?
I think the original idea there was that we wanted the highest value engineering review we could at earliest in the process so that you could keep your batch size small. So if you're having consistent quality and security failures, you probably need to have a kind of a different kind of conversation about how your team ships code, which is tough, right? But we don't want to make that easier. We want to, right? We want that conversation to surface, and we want teams to improve. And so by keeping it where it is, we force that conversation at the moment of acceptance as opposed to at the moment of approval. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I'd still like it to be configurable, but we don't always get what we want.
And with that, we have time for one more question.
So 2 kind of questions. The first is, you sort of briefly covered over there that you're using delivery to push to some special Git repository. Now, is it possible to use GitHub as a backend for your Git repository? And if not just that, the more general question is, what would be a suitable migration strategy from, because obviously all tests are written in some other place, Jenkins or Go or wherever, and what would be a way to migrate across without sort of big bang?
Great questions, both of them. So GitHub integration. Yeah, we have that. It works, though, a little bit not perfectly. So the way that it works is if you have an enterprise Git relationship, it works wonderfully. Open source is a lot harder because your user base is not super well defined, and delivery tries to guarantee kind of audit logs, audit trail, all the things that you would want in your software. So we actually did deploy GitHub integration across our open source products, and oh man, was that a bad idea. It ended up creating this environment where people were like, why am I all of a sudden untrusted, right? Because we had to find a way to quarantine external users, but they had commit bits. And so we just really did that poorly. It didn't work out at all. So we backed that down, and we're going to reevaluate with better community engagement to make sure that we deliver something that actually helps everyone as opposed to just delivery. Second question about Jenkins migration. So we actually have another open source cookbook that enables the ability to, from delivery, to trigger a Jenkins build and wait till it completes as part of your process. So in publish, for some of our projects, all it does is just hit the Jenkins API and says, go do the thing you used to do. Just keep doing it. But now we're going to track that through delivery just at the top. And then you can kind of choose to migrate that as you will, but you have out-of-the-box functionality.
Can I also add to that? So the delivery CLI that you saw when we did delivery review, it has some other options to do delivery job and run jobs locally from the command line. You can even say -local -docker and do a container. And so you could plug the delivery command line into your Go or your Jenkins tools, just so you are going through the workflow and you're using the workflow cookbooks that we're producing. So that's another way of
I think so, but I'd have to relog in.
Okay, so let's hear it for Alex and Oliver. It's pretty amazing stuff. And the moment of truth, did your build go all the way through?
So this is the... Yeah. Hi there.
Woo! Look at that. Hi there. Wow.
Only the hardest changes get shipped.
That's amazing.